So, after the success of the French Connection of The Exorcist, William Friedkin was basically given free reign to do whatever he wanted. And so he came up with this brilliant idea that he wanted to do a remake of the 1950s French art house film, The Wages of Fear, which basically the plot premise of that was, like, the whole bunch of, like, there's, like, a dangerous criminals, and they get, like, a bunch of nitroglycerin that if it, like, shakes, the whole thing will blow up. Yeah, so he decides he wants to redo that. So due to the release of Star Wars a month earlier, as well as the misleading title, because let's face it, what the hell does Sorcerer mean in terms of this film? Unless you actually see the film, you don't know. The film was a commercial failure, picking up just $9 million worldwide and a budget of around $20 million. Critically, this film was equally as polarizing, with some, such as the great Roger Ebert, commenting that the jungle scenes, the rain and flood, and the fire catastrophe were among the most exciting scenes he had ever seen. And while others, such as Leslie Hallowell, were questioning why anyone would want to spend $20 million on a remake of The Wages of Fear, do it badly, and give it a misleading title. Today, the film is now regarded as a misunderstood masterpiece, and William Friedkin himself has commented on how he finds this film to his favorite. Guys, what did we think of Sorcerer? Michael, I know you didn't see this one.
Details. Way to rush through the intro, though. I have to say.
I rattled that. I planned that out. I was like, yes.
Clearly, you practiced this because I'm sure everyone completely missed what you said. My favorite part was the part where he takes the sword out of the stone. That was beautifully done.
Yeah, in hindsight, I probably should have specified which Sorcerer was, but I gave you a link, and you were like, no, I'm going to go find it myself, blah, blah, blah.
I even gave you a link.
And then you were like, no, I'm going to go watch this, like, animated movie, blah, blah, blah.
But, no, I wanted to comment on your intro there, because it was probably more exciting than the first hour of the film anyway, so...
I love this
I had a lot of difficulty with this film right at the beginning, because I cannot stand a movie that does not give you something to look forward to.
No, and I basically explained, like, after I saw it, I came to both of you, and I was like, you are both going to hate this movie. You're going to hate it because the first hour, like, almost nothing happens, and you're going to hate it because it requires you to suspend disbelief, which is something you're not very good at doing.
Actually, I would hate it for both reasons. I'm going to be entirely honest.
Yeah.
How long is the movie?
2 hours.
It's
2 hours.
Yeah.
So... it spends 60 minutes establishing...
It spends about 50 minutes establishing what's happening.
And then an hour actually happening.
Yeah.
Why? That is a huge waste of time.
We're going to get into that. And I have full reasons why that is.
Yeah.
No, you continue. You were saying about the...
slow-ass intro.
Yeah, slow hour.
Yeah, so if you actually manage to get through the first hour of the film, it gets to be a pretty exciting movie. Like, I got really pissed off when the French guy died, because I did not see that coming.
Victor was the best.
And I was lying in bed watching this movie, so it was me at 11 o'clock at night lying in bed watching this movie. Yeah, you know. And literally, as soon as that scene happened, I almost rage quit on this film. It was that bad. I didn't know that William Friedkin had made this movie, so as soon as I saw the credits at the end, it all just made sense to me. But I went into this film so unprepared, and that's probably my fault, but I did not see any of this coming.
That's probably my fault.
Should you need to be prepared to watch the movie?
I forgot to mention this earlier. If everybody had to rate Taxi Driver out of 5, what would everybody rate Taxi Driver out of?
You know, I kind of want to take away points for the ambiguity, and I kind of want to add points for the ambiguity.
I gave it full 5 on Letterboxd.
My gut says about 4.
I would say the same.
Okay, I gave it the full 5 on Letterboxd. I'm just asking because I want to know what you gave Sorcerer.
What I gave Sorcerer.
What you gave Sorcerer out of 5?
In all honesty, the beginning for me... No, it wouldn't be... I wouldn't give it a negative because...
That's what you would
the fact that I waited out the movie and watched it at the end, it was worth the wait. I just am not a very patient person when it comes to movies, which is why I hate neorealism, is because I don't have the patience. So I would probably rate that, like, Sorcerer somewhere on, like, a 3.5.
Okay.
It's a good movie. I quite enjoyed it, but I just can't stand just useless information at the beginning.
Okay. I want to ask this question, because I think this needs to be asked.
Yeah.
For the first 50 minutes, which I think we'll all agree is slow, was that a good use of the first 50 minutes?
I'm going to explain that right now.
Was there enough information that it had to be 50 minutes long? Could it have been condensed?
Maybe, but I'm going to explain exactly what that opening backstory does.
Okay,
so in counterpoint to you,
yeah,
I thought this thing was a Swiss watch. Like,
Right.
I gave it full 5 out of 5 on Letterboxd. It's in my top 50 films of all time.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. I love this thing. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
And basically, what I came to the conclusion of is that the reason the film is titled Sorcerer is because the sorcerer is faked.
Yeah.
And so if you look at the first 20 minutes of the film, not a single word is spoken in English almost. Like, there was like maybe 2 lines in English in
I
the
have to
first
comment
20
on
minutes.
Subtitles were so wrong.
In the first 20 minutes, whatever, the subtitles, done with subtitles. And they all, basically the first 20 minutes is 4 like vignettes, and they all establish each of these characters escaping from death in some situation.
Yeah.
Like, there's the one guy who escapes prison, like basically being executed in prison. There's the one guy who escapes being thrown away in jail for life for fraud. There's the one guy who escapes from an automobile accident without dying. They all kind of escape something and end up in South America.
Yeah.
That was boring.
It was fantastic. like Michael's like, this is awesome.
Yeah, that doesn't sound very boring. That
No,
sounds awesome.
Fantastic.
It's not as exciting as we're making it sound to be because
So
it's
the
just
presentation was
the
different.
presentation. I think could like the information was there. I just think it could have been done in a more enticing way for someone like me who just. I love action movies and I love watching all these things
Hey,
unveil.
yeah,
And as soon as all that happened, I understood it. But I just think it could have been done in a faster paced way.
See, I don't, because I think it's essential to the way the film works. It's part of 70s filmmaking, is that in the 70s with these kind of directors that had so much kind of control over everything,
Yeah.
they wanted to do a lot of backstory and they liked to just slow things down, take a moment and do other, like, basically kind of like the Gore Verbinski.
But when
stuff.
you have to do it
But I
4
don't buy
times
that.
though.
I mean, you can do backstory and have engaging characters
Yeah.
without writing the Encyclopedia Britannica for each one
Yeah,
up front.
that's what I
so
agree.
great.
I
No,
agree
it's
with
how
that.
you pace it.
The inside, and this is what I'm getting to, is like, he needs to do this because what he establishes is this idea that he kind of just basically makes these characters out to be just basically criminals through 50 minutes. He kind of detaches you from them.
Yeah.
And then once they get into the job, you realize that you want them to succeed so desperately because they're human and not because they're criminals. And there's this one line earlier in the film where one of the people is reading some like novel, like some play about like a former Nazi person who was like talking
A
about
former Nazi.
I can't remember. This movie's got a lot of Nazi themes in it, but
Oh, yeah.
fascist
Yeah,
themes in
yeah,
it. But
yeah.
I can't remember what exactly it was. But it was something along the
I'll
lines of
forgive you.
there's this like he shoot one of the basically one of the Nazi officers shoots a soldier from an opposing army, and
That
the
does
question
happen in war.
yeah, of course, and the question, but like just basically like executes him. And the question that she asks, one of the characters, I think it's Victor, the French guy,
Yeah.
he says something along the lines of, I'm trying to get her, he says something along the lines of, he was just a soldier, that's what that means. And she's like, nobody is just anything, is what his girlfriend says. And this kind of implies that they're not just criminals, they're also human too.
Yeah, I agree
And
with
by
that.
wanting them to succeed, because you want humanity to succeed, and that's what
Yeah.
it builds up in the first 50 minutes.
Yeah.
Maybe he could probably cut that by 10 or 15
I
minutes.
was gonna say if it
but
was
I
about
could-
10-15 minutes
I could
shorter.
say you could cut that by about 40 minutes.
I don't know.
No, you
I
can't
don't
cut
think
40
40
minutes.
minutes, but I think if we definitely made it a little bit shorter, it would have been for someone like me. I kind of wanted to like for you to pick up all that information. I would have had to go online and read that. I didn't quite pick it up. Mind you, it was at 11 o'clock
Yeah,
at night.
obviously.
But I couldn't pick that up the first time I read it or watched. I was reading it. I was reading subtitles, watching the movie. But I think, if we definitely made it at least 15 minutes shorter, it would have been a little easier to digest.
I mean, it's one of those films that you kind of have to remember what's happening as you go along, even though it is kind of the first 50 minutes are kind of a little slower. You have to remember what happened in the early parts of the thing to understand it. Like when they show them working on the oil rig and it's so monotonous, and it's so boring and bland, and then they cut to like everything about like him building up the idea of like the trucks they're driving is basically a walking death trap, like with the mechanic montage, right, where they're like building this horrible looking truck and you're like, there's no way that thing's gonna hold up for 200 miles across like no road, like there's no way that thing's gonna hold up, and then it almost does, and it just builds the story as you go along. It's basically the ultimate definition of pacing and payoff, like setup and payoff. You haven't seen it, so you don't know.
I'm just not so sure about that because
with the idea of it.
although I feel it could be done less than 50 minutes, and that's
No, I definitely
because
agree.
I come from an industry where you don't have that luxury. If you want someone's attention and you don't have it in the first minute, they're doing something else. They're playing a different game. So you need to kind of put all your cards on the table at once, hook them, and then you can elaborate.
Yeah,
but you have to do so in a way that it never gets boring.
Yeah.
That means flashbacks. That means reveals through behaviors and tics, where you can't just relay information, but you have to relay information in ways that make it seem like you're not relaying information, or at least that you're not dumping information on them.
I mean, I hate flashbacks because it always feels to me like they're just dumping information on me. Like, that's like, why didn't you tell me this earlier? Or why
What if it's a 10-second flashback?
I still think that's stupid.
I still think
Other than Memento, everything that which is my favorite movie of all time, coincidentally.
But Memento was built around that notion.
A flashback, like Memento was built around the notion of you have to remember what happened. You have to pay attention.
But the
flashbacks,
story is told in reverse.
I feel, are like something like, I don't know, what's that? The Gore Verbinski ring, where it's just like the 9 millionth time, like it cuts back to the ring. You're like, God damn it.
True.
I don't need to see this.
But that's another problem. Is that you need to keep telling information, and you need to keep telling it in
Progressing the
ways
information, yes.
that the audience doesn't catch on that they're being told information. Like, if you give them 50 flashbacks in a movie, they'll recognize, oh, another flashback. This is more like, I don't want to read a textbook. I'm not here for school. You know, I'm here to have fun.
Yeah, exactly.
And I may be coming into it with an unrealistic expectation, or at least unrealistic background perspective, given how movies were made at the time.
Well, it definitely. I mean, that's definitely a thing in the 70s, right? Like, if you look at one of my other favorite movies of all time is Deer Hunter, and the first hour of that is basically character development through a wedding. First hour and 10 minutes, character development through a wedding. Like, it's fantastic. The movie's brilliant. It gets more character development done than the entirety of Full Metal Jacket.
Yeah.
Like, it's a time of, basically it's like a hallmark of the era is that the 70s had a lot of like
Chill.
Well, they had a lot of expository, like, backstory and development. They didn't spend a lot of time blowing stuff up.
Just to throw a wrench in the works, was that a cultural notion of the time in the way stories should be told? Or was that a limitation in the development of how you told stories through cinema at the time?
I think it was more the fact that at the time, studios had no money, so they basically had to trust directors to do the right thing. And so directors, like, when left with their own, like... Directors, when given control, will like do whatever they want, and a lot of these guys were not like built around the idea of moving quickly. They watched a lot of like foreign French cinema, right? And
oh God.
Yes, Kasen, I know. Yes, I know. You hate it, but it's like it
Those
does that.
Poor people.
But that was what they loved, and that's what they grew up watching, and so they felt that was the best way to do things. Now, if you gave directors
it's true.
If you had the same thing returned, you'd probably still see a lot of action movies.
Yes,
done.
But is that again a cultural thing? If before in the 70s, it was very much a homage to the French film that came before it and pushed the envelope.
New wave, basically.
In the same way that action has kind of defined the movie expectations we have now. Is that a constraint of the time, or is that their actual artistic vision?
I think it also could be a money thing too, because if you take a look at all the money nowadays spent to make an action movie, like on modern day, it is ridiculous. But just from my opinion, back in the time, like I realized that money values are different. But if you look at like a general consensus of 70s movies, a lot of them probably didn't have that same amount of budget, and to make those effects is quite expensive. Even like now we have CG, but back then you would more or less have to do it live.
No, and I think I mentioned that.
But CG's not perfect either.
CG's never perfect, but it costs a lot. CG costs a lot.
Oh yeah. I am glad that people are finally starting to realize that CG is not the cure-all.
No, so if you have a really good plot, like you don't need a lot of CG. Like I get that.
Okay, yeah, so $20 million in 1987, that's what I was looking for. Okay, so basically, Sports Story is a pretty big budget movie. Mm-hmm. Like, even by the 80 million.
Well, to travel to South America.
Well, it's all shot on location.
Still 80 million?
Well,
the equivalent of 80 million today? Yeah, that's
one of the more bigger budget films of even today. Yes. Mm-hmm. And I think I mentioned that earlier, that when I started with my diatribe on the 70s, is that studios had no money. They were kind of all bankrupt.
Yeah.
They were all kind of, because people got tired of the studio system. So they were all kind of in this hard place. So they had to give stuff to the director.
Which is interesting too, because it shows another It shows the burn, consume, burnout pattern. If I'm gonna make terms up,
That's
where I know, but it starts, it gets super popular, it gets too big for its own good, it dies out. Someone kind of picks up from the ashes, and the cycle starts over.
Well, and I mean, I wanted to do Heaven's Gate later when we are going to do revisionist westerns, but that is the film that killed the New Hollywood era because that film is
Permanently.
pretty much because that film is so excessive. It's 4 hours. You're gonna hate it. It's,
Oh, 4 hours.
I don't mind a 4-hour movie as long as it keeps me entertained
it's
for 4
4
hours.
hours.
Let's
so
be honest.
excessive.
The Lord of the Rings is essentially a 9-hour movie.
Yeah, but
they
that-
just pretended it's 3 different movies.
Yeah. I mean, I have like it's the same. I mean, it's funny because I'm so like inconsistent in that
It's
I love
true.
Heaven's Gate, but I dislike Lord of the Rings for the same reasons that I like Heaven's Gate.
Yeah.
No, that means you're human. Humans are essentially
inconsistent. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah,
It's
and I mean, I don't know how to explain it, but I mean, I can totally see why this movie kind of bombed for 2 reasons. One, because you look at A New Hope, you have A New Hope, or you can choose to go see this thing by William Friedkin that nobody actually knows what it is, and it's got this shitty title that doesn't make any sense. Apparently, like there were reports that they had to like put signs out in front of the screens because in the first 20 minutes of the film there's almost no English language
Yeah.
spoken.
No.
They had to put signs out in front of the theater saying this is an English language film. The first 20 minutes are just kind of
No.
our
Yeah.
I agree, and that was one of the things I was going to mention is I understand that artists want full control over how to tell their how to make their art their way to express what they want to express in the ways they want to express it. I have no problem with that, but at the same time, the producer in me looks at it and goes, but you have to some degree cater to your audience.
Yeah, I agree with that.
That may be like this.
No.
That if people are expecting an English film, you have to establish quickly that this film is in English before you can start playing with who's speaking in what language. Because otherwise you alienate them right off the bat. And they go looking for the theater staff, and they go, why is my movie not in English?
Yeah, I understand that because I know with me I am multilingual. So I didn't watch this movie with subtitles on. I didn't have to, but I would understand that if you watch this movie with subtitles, well, first of all, the subtitles are 100% wrong.
YouTube
But-
subtitles?
Oh, it's bad. But
This is the
yeah,
best.
like I was even sitting there and thinking, Tom, why did you pick a movie that wasn't in English?
Oh, next week we're doing a film that's not in English.
Oh, fantastic.
Oh, great.
No, but
Well, actually, no. I'll be interested to see how well they can pull communication off.
I love foreign films. To be 100% honest, but
Foreign films are good,
and I
as long as
fully
they're done.
and I fully
Anybody.
and I fully understand. I mean, that's why I said both of you were going to hate this. I fully expected both of you to hate this thing when you watch it. I mean, you haven't seen it. You sort of hated it, sort of didn't.
Thomas
Yeah,
is just too
I'm-
sophisticated for us.
No, it's not, I'm not saying that I'm too sophisticated. It's just this thing is my kind of movie because it's wholly excessive and wholly ridiculous.
Oh, so you like the other animated Titanic?
Of
movie.
course, that movie's great. It's also why I like Food Fight.
I'm just the kind of person who likes to. I'm like a child in the way that I kind of like to be. If I'm watching something, I kind of want to be fed it instead of having to go get it myself. If that makes
Well,
sense.
no, that makes sense. Part of it's cultural.
Yeah.
Part of it's lifestyle.
Yeah, I know.
And part of it's simply taste.
Part of what really disappoints me about this is the actual critic. I mean, I don't really care about whether any of the people actually saw it.
But you care about the
fact-
way the critics reviewed it.
And the fact that when it initially came out, I mean, now I understand that people have come back and viewed it as a misunderstood masterpiece and stuff. And it's considered much higher esteem than it was in '77. The fact that nobody saw the fact that the cinematography is beyond gorgeous.
Oh, it's amazing.
On location cinematography shots of the
It
jungle
was
beyond
great.
gorgeous. The bridge scene where the one where he's the truck.
Oh,
I
that
have
gave
no-
me a heart attack.
I have no idea how he filmed that.
I don't know either. I literally the background person in me understands that a lot of that rain was obviously added in rain because there's no way rain
There's no way he could have done that with
No,
actual
I
rain.
understand.
If he did, I have no idea.
I make movies. I don't even know how he did that.
I have no idea. For shooting it on location, I have no idea.
Those roads too were terrifying. Like if you don't understand the driving luxuries that we have here in North America, like
No, I've seen Europe. Some of the roads are really sketchy.
What's
No,
that,
but
the
even-
one that goes through the ocean?
you're gonna watch this. If you watch this movie and watch the roads they drive on, with the crap cars that they're driving on, I would never have done that in my life in a real Hummer car or even
Like
like a Range Rover. Never mind one of those pieces of shit.
the walking death trap of their car.
Oh
their
my
trucks
god!
were.
Like that gave me a heart attack.
I mean, and you can see it within the film. It literally looks like they went through hell to get that thing.
Yeah.
Like they went through hell and
And to
back.
die in the end. That's why I rage quit. Well, I didn't rage quit, but I wanted to
You
rage quit.
almost rage quit.
I almost rage quit. I almost walked out like you did.
I mean, and that's part of the ending.
We should introduce me that way. That I am the one guy who walked out on The Graduate. I should clarify that I do not think it was a bad movie.
That just hurt. That hurt me so much, Michael.
I laughed.
That amused you.
It did amuse me. It also hurt me.
I was eating my
inside.
dinner
I was
and
laughing. I was laughing through the pain, Michael. I was laughing through the
I was just laughing at them both and eating my dinner. It was great.
So that's pretty much as usual.
Yeah, and I mean, like you can connect back to the fate thing at the very end of the film. It cuts to like the guys, the one guy who lives is Serrano,
Yeah.
and and his thing was that he stole from a rival gang in New York, and it cuts to the rival gang getting off the plane.
Yeah, so he's
getting
gonna
a taxi.
die.
It's like you can't escape fate. The sorcerer is here.
Yeah.
Love it.
But I
Love
played
it.
the half-hour game that pulled off that message.
Yeah, but the sorcerer did it in 2 hours as a movie where they went through the jungle.
I think it could have been done in an hour and a half, but I understand.
And yeah, I mean, I love this thing. Apparently, other funny stories. They had to announce that this thing was not like a science fiction type film. Like they had to
It was
announce
considered a science
or a
fiction.
fantasy film. Sorry, that was what I was saying. They had to like put a sign over alongside the one. This is an English
Not a
language.
fantasy.
This is not a fantasy.
I
movie
was going to
because
say, if you
people
put
keep-
that beside Star Wars, that might confuse people.
People came into this and said people came into this like the theater thinking that it was going to be like a film about an actual sorcerer, and it turns out it was this movie about people driving through the jungle.
I wouldn't have called it Sorcerer. I would have called it something else. I mean, there's the ever obvious fate, but if
There's the
that's
ever
too
obvious
blunt
wages
force
of-
trauma,
There's the ever obvious Wages of Fear because it's a remake of the
Meh.
Wages of Fear.
well, how about Trapped? I mean, that works as well. Death on Wheels. So
Death on
Wheels. That's fantastic.
I mean, at least it's
rickety rope bridge.
it's cheesy as hell, but at least it's more genre
Don't
accurate.
drown.
Remember the nitroglycerin you're carrying? Yeah, that's might blow up at any second.
That should have been the name. That should have been the name. All of that.
Rated R. Coming soon. Rated R.
Remember that nitroglycerin you're carrying? Like, there you go. Movie sold.
Without a doubt, like I can just imagine that. Like, like this is basically like I can imagine us like coming up with the marketing campaign for this.
I would have sex with that movie.
Oh, God.
That's what she said.
On that note, I think it's time we move to Michael's film, Lethal Weapon.